When I retired, everyone kept asking the same question. So, what are you going to do now? I laughed every time, but inside, I had no answer. After 40 years of delivering mail, I didn't really know how to live without destinations. My hands were used to sorting letters, turning keys, opening boxes that didn't belong to me. Now they didn't know where to go. The first morning of retirement, I woke up at 6:30. Same as always. Made coffee, opened the curtains, and stood there, watching a quiet street that no longer expected me. The mailbox across the road looked like it missed me too. It's funny, the things you start talking to when the world goes quiet. At first, I tried to keep busy. I cleaned the attic, washed every curtain in the house, baked banana bread 3 times just because I could. But there's only so much banana bread one woman can eat before she realizes she's just killing time. And time, I've learned, doesn't die easy. My name's Maggie O'Connor, 68 years old, widow, former postal worker from Oregon. I've spent my whole life carrying other people's messages. Love letters, late payments, goodbyes, birthday cards, promises never kept. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to deliver one thing: my own story. Until the day I found the key. It was sitting on my porch rail. No note, no label. Just a small metal key, old and scratched, with a loop of red thread tied to it. It looked expectant, like it was waiting for someone to give it meaning again. And in that moment, I decided, if I couldn't find who it belonged to, maybe it belonged to me. That same evening, I pulled an old map from my drawer, the one I used to keep under the seat of my delivery truck. I spread it out on the kitchen table. It still smelled faintly of dust and ink. My route had been a grid for years. Predictable, square, safe. This time I wanted something else. Something with curves, something uncertain. I drew a red line down the western coast, Oregon, California, maybe Arizona if the van held up. I had no plan, just a feeling that there was still mail left to deliver. Only now, it wasn't to people. It was to places. That's how I ended up buying Dottie, a faded blue Ford Transit that used to belong to a coworker. The seats were cracked, the radio only played one channel, and the AC worked when it wanted to. But when I turned the ignition, the sound felt like freedom. I loaded her with the basics: a thermos, some books, my notebooks full of half-written poems, a camera that hadn't worked right since 2003, and of course, the mysterious key. I taped a small note to the dashboard: deliver hope. At the time, it was just a joke. Now, I think it was a reminder. My first stop was a tiny town called Crescent Bay. Population: don't blink or you'll miss it. The kind of place where every store sells coffee, postcards, and a little bit of gossip. I parked Dottie near the edge of the beach, boiled some water on my small camping stove, and sat with my mug, watching the sunrise burn through the fog. It was quiet. Not the lonely kind, but the good kind. The kind that hums, like an old song you forgot you loved. That's when I met Joan. She was sitting outside her old RV, surrounded by maps, white hair, sharp eyes, a smile that looked like it had survived a few storms. She had that air, like she knew where she was going, even if the road didn't. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she replied, without looking up. "You mapping the future or the past?" "Both," she said and smiled. We got to talking the way travelers do. Slow, curious, half wary, half lonely. She told me she used to be a lawyer, then a cartographer, and now, something in between. Her new project was called Luz, Spanish for light. She carried a small box full of tiny round mirrors, some new, some cracked. On the back of each, she etched a word or a phrase: hope, forgive, listen. Then she'd leave them in places that had once saved her. A park bench where a stranger comforted her, a bus stop where she decided not to give up, a diner that let her eat for free. Each one's a spark, she said. Someone finds it, and for a moment the world feels a little less heavy. I liked that. It sounded like postal work for the soul. So when she asked if I wanted to help her plant a few lights along the coast, I didn't hesitate. The first one we left together was under a wooden bridge near the ocean. The tide was low, the light golden, the air smelled like salt and rust. We used duct tape and a small nail to fasten a mirror beneath the railing. On the back, Joan wrote, "If you found this, the world has noticed you again." I added a heart and the date. She drew a small compass with no north marked. We stood there for a long time, watching the sunlight catch the water. It flickered like Morse code, a message from something bigger than both of us. That night, parked by the cliffs, I couldn't sleep. The waves were loud, the air cold. I sat in Dottie's front seat and looked at the key again, spinning it in my fingers. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of not knowing. Because maybe, I thought, that key wasn't meant to open anything. Maybe it was just there to remind me. I still can. The road after Crescent Bay was long and quiet, a ribbon of dust that wound through hills and half-forgotten towns. Sometimes I'd talk to Dottie just to hear another voice. She didn't answer, but she hummed. An old engine hum, low and loyal. That was enough. By the third morning, I started feeling like I was being guided somewhere. Not by the map, but by the light itself. Every time the sun hit my windshield a certain way, I'd take the next turn. It sounds crazy, but it kept working. That's how I ended up at an abandoned RV park near the edge of what used to be the San Juan River. The sign was barely hanging. Silver Sands, all are welcome. The A had fallen off, so it read, all are welcome. Maybe that's why I stopped. It looked like it needed someone to fill in the missing part. A handful of trailers stood there, patched with tin and hope. Smoke curled from a rusty barrel. The smell of coffee drifted through the air. Real coffee, not the instant stuff I'd been living on. I parked, waved, and said something like, "Didn't know there was still life out here." A man with a sunburned face and a sleeveless denim shirt looked up and grinned. "Oh, there's life everywhere," he said. "You just gotta be quiet enough to hear it." His name was Tom, a retired mechanic, part philosopher, part ghost. He'd been living there for years, fixing engines that would never run again, trading repairs for stories. We sat by the fire, sipping from old tin mugs, and he asked me where I was headed. "South," I said, "following something, not sure what." He nodded like he'd heard that before. Everyone here's following something. Usually, it's themselves. I showed him Joan's map, the one she'd drawn for her Loose project. Tiny circles, arrows, strange marks that look like constellations. Tom studied it for a long time, tracing a finger along the lines. "These aren't just places," he said quietly. "They're memories. Each one's got a heartbeat." I laughed. "Then this one must be skipping beats. I can't make sense of it." He pointed to a spot near the Rio Grande, a curve in the map where the ink had bled a little. "You see this?" he said. "That's the bend where we used to camp back in '82. There's an old boat there. Folks call it the Silent One." I raised an eyebrow. "And why would a boat be silent?" He smiled. "Because it's got nothing left to prove." Then, after a pause, "If your light leads you there, you should go. Look under the bow. Sometimes things wait longer than people think." He poured me one last bit of coffee, then said, almost as an afterthought, "If you meet Joan again, tell her Tom says her eagles still fly." That stayed with me the whole drive south. The road to the Rio Grande shimmered with heat. The red hills looked like folded skin, ancient and wise. I drove with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair, the key hanging from the rearview mirror, tapping softly against the glass like it was keeping time. At a gas station in Espanola, I stopped for fuel and a sandwich. The kid at the counter saw my map and chuckled. "You lost, ma'am." "Just retired," I said. "Same thing around here," he grinned. "Most people come to New Mexico to lose something, or find it. Usually the same thing." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. When I reached the river, the world went still. The air smelled of mud and sage. The boat was exactly where Tom said it would be, half sunk in the shallows, chained to a tree that had long stopped growing. Its paint was cracked, its name barely visible, Luce the Four. I stepped closer. The wood groaned beneath my hand as if it remembered being touched. Inside, the boat was empty, except for a loose plank. I lifted it, and beneath it was a small metal canister. My heart kicked like it used to when I'd open a letter that wasn't mine. Inside, a photograph. 2 women. Me and Joan. Younger, sunburned, laughing, standing in front of the same boat, decades ago. On the back, in her handwriting, "When you find this, you'll find me." Under the photo was a folded note. It said, "Maggie, if you're reading this, it means you kept the map. Thank you for remembering that light exists. I've gone where the real one lives, where the desert meets the sky. Truth or consequences. Room 7. Leave coffee. And a mirror." I sat there in that boat until the light changed color. Not crying, just breathing. The kind of breathing you do when you realize something is both ending and beginning at once. That night, I camped on the riverbank. I boiled water, poured coffee into my metal cup, and watched the stars. They were so bright, it felt like they were close enough to talk to. Retirement, I thought, isn't the end of work. It's just a new kind of job. Now I work with memories and dust and little pieces of sky. As I climbed into Dottie, I whispered into the dark, "Joan, I'm coming." And for a moment, I swear one of the stars flickered back. By the time I reached truth or consequences, the sky was bleeding gold, the kind of desert sunset that feels like it's been waiting its whole life for you to notice. The town was small, smaller than I remembered. A single main street, half-empty stores, a diner that looked older than both of us, and a motel that had seen better decades. Desert Rose Inn. A faded sign buzzed above it, one letter flickering on and off like it was winking at me. I parked Dottie under a crooked palm tree and stepped out. The air was warm, heavy with the smell of dust and rain that never came. I found room 7 easily. Its number was barely hanging by a single screw. The door was painted turquoise, my favorite color, though I never told anyone that. On the small porch, there was a chair, a cheap plastic one, but clean. And on the table next to it, an ashtray, a chipped mug, and a folded newspaper from 20 years ago. I stood there for a moment, my heart beating faster than it should have. Then I did what she asked. I placed the cup of coffee on the table, hot, strong, black, and beside it a small round mirror, one of Joan's loose pieces I'd kept in my pocket since the bridge. On the back, I'd written, "For the one who remembers." The evening wind passed, light as breath. The mirror caught a glint of dying sunlight and sent it straight into the window. For a split second, I thought I saw someone inside, a shadow, maybe just reflection. Then it was gone. I knocked once, no answer. Twice. Still nothing. I sighed, turned to leave, and that's when I noticed the envelope under the door. Old paper, my name written in blue ink. Maggie O'Connor. I froze. Nobody in this town should have known that name. Inside was a single piece of stationery folded twice. The handwriting, Jones. I'd know it anywhere. Maggie, if you're here, then you followed the map exactly as it was meant to be followed. But the map isn't mine anymore. It belongs to the road and to you. I've left pieces of light, not just mirrors, but people. Some you'll meet, some you already have. The Loose Project was never about remembering me. It was about reminding you that the world still remembers itself. Go north of town. There's a dry lake. At dawn, the light will show you the next direction. Don't look for me. Look for what we left behind. J. I sat there on the steps of room 7 for a long time, holding that note. The night crept in slow, the kind that doesn't rush you, just sits beside you quietly. Across the street, the diner turned on its neon sign, open 24 hours. The O flickered like a heartbeat. I went in. The place was nearly empty, just a waitress with tired eyes and a radio humming low jazz. I took a booth near the window, ordered pie and coffee, and unfolded Joan's letter again. People, she wrote. She'd left people. Maybe that was the point. We weren't meant to carry the light alone. The waitress brought my coffee and gave me a long look. "You look like you've been somewhere far," she said. "Everywhere feels far lately," I answered. She nodded. "You one of them? The mirror folk?" That made me blink. "The what?" She shrugged. "We get a few every year. Folks who come with those little shiny circles. Some leave 'em, some find 'em. Always looking for someone named Joan. Never stay long." My throat tightened. "You ever met her?" She shook her head. "No, but she mailed me one years ago. Came with a note that said, 'Keep the coffee warm.' So I do." We smiled, the kind of smile that carries both question and answer. When I left the diner, the desert had gone silver under the moon. I drove north, following the sound of crickets and my own heartbeat. Dottie's headlights cut through the dust, and after a few miles, I saw the dry lake bed Joan had mentioned. A wide, pale circle of earth that shimmered faintly, like it still remembered being water. I parked and stepped out. The ground cracked under my shoes, the air electric. And then, just as the horizon began to blush with the first light of dawn, I saw it. Hundreds of small mirrors, half buried in the dust. Tiny, round, glinting like stars that had fallen and decided to rest here. Each one etched with a single word: forgive, stay, return, begin. I knelt down, my reflection fractured across a dozen tiny surfaces. It looked strange, like I was made of all the women I used to be. And then I noticed one mirror different from the rest, larger with a piece of paper taped to its back. "Maggie, if you found this, you've reached the halfway mark. You don't need a destination anymore. You are the map. You are the light." I laughed out loud into the empty morning. It echoed, rolled over the plain, and came back softer, like the desert was laughing with me. The sun climbed higher, and the mirrors began to fade under the glare. I gathered a few and placed them gently into a canvas pouch. Not to keep, but to deliver. I didn't know to whom yet, but I'd learned that life has its own postal routes. Sometimes you just have to walk them until the next mailbox appears. By noon, I was back on the road, heading west. The radio, still stuck on one channel, played an old song I hadn't heard in decades. Joan used to hum it under her breath when she worked. It was about light, too. I sang along, badly, but with heart. The kind of singing that shakes the dust off your ribs. And somewhere between verses, I realized something. Joan hadn't just left me directions. She'd left me a way to live, one small reflection at a time. The morning I left Truth or Consequences, the air smelled like hot dust and oranges. I packed Dottie the way you pack when you've decided not to turn back. Thermos filled, mirrors wrapped in soft cloth, notebook open to a blank page. I tucked Joan's letter into the sun visor and set the mysterious key beside it, like two elders keeping watch. I was headed north, not toward any one dot on the map, toward a thread I could feel in my chest, tugging me through the desert like a kite string. They say traveling alone makes the world louder. I think it makes it honest. Every mile marker is a question. Every sunrise is an answer you don't have to translate. I stopped for gas outside Elephant Butte, where a man in a straw hat told me his RV had learned all his bad habits and none of his good ones. We laughed, swapped road tips, and I left a tiny mirror on the base of the pump. On its back, I etched, "Be kind to the machines that carry your heart." He watched me do it, shaking his head like I'd just fed a coin to a magic well. By the time I reached Albuquerque, the sky was practicing surprise. It burst open with color, balloons rising like quiet prayers, red, blue, striped patchwork, a floating quilt sewed by the wind. I parked on the dusty edge of the field and stood with my coffee, letting the heat from the burners kiss my cheeks. A family stood beside me, 3 generations wrapped in secondhand jackets and first-rate awe. The grandmother touched my sleeve. "You here for the balloons?" I smiled. "I'm here for the lift." She nodded like she understood the difference. I tucked a loose mirror beneath the wooden rail of the viewing platform. fastened with clear tape where fingers could find it, but eyes might not. On the back, I wrote, "If you look up when you're tired, you're already lighter." A boy with mittens watched me, curious but respectful. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Some moments are better as secrets two strangers keep together. North again. The road unrolled like a ribbon somebody finally decided to use. In Bernalillo, I ducked into a small library with windows that faced a cottonwood. The librarian wore a sweater with tiny embroidered stars and a name tag that simply said Ruth. I asked if I could see the map section. She led me to a low shelf, the kind children grow out of and adults grow back into. "Do you mind," I said, "if I leave a tiny bookmark for a traveler?" Ruth considered me with the measured warmth of someone who knows both rules and exceptions by heart. "If it helps someone find their way," she said, "it belongs here." Under the lip of the shelf, I tucked a mirror the size of a silver dollar. On it, between latitude and attitude, "Listen." I smoothed the tape and felt the wood hum under my fingers. The cottonwood outside flickered its leaves like a soft applause. Back on the highway, Dottie coughed, a small, indelicate sound that made my shoulders climb toward my ears. A red light blinked on the dash. I spoke to her out loud, the way people talk to pets and saints. "Okay, baby, not here. Give me a mile." She gave me 2. We limped into a place with a hand-painted sign, Earl's Honest Garage. The building leaned a little, like it accepted time without taking it personally. Earl himself was compact, greased to the elbows, and wore the expression of a man who had been surprised by nothing and delighted by a few select things. "What's she telling you?" he asked, head already under Dottie's hood. "That she's tired of pretending she's 25. He snorted. "Aren't we all?" While he worked, I sat on an upside-down crate and watched the dust dance in the strip of sunlight by the bay door. Shops like that are chapels if you listen right, the liturgy of ratchets and radio, and the low prayer of patience. Earl fixed a split fuel line and a fuse that had been offering more enthusiasm than function. 2 hours, a bottle of water, and 3 stories later, he handed me the keys. "She'll carry your light," he said. "Just don't make her prove it uphill in third." I left a mirror under the edge of his pegboard, nestled beside the silhouette of a wrench. "Keep the road honest," I wrote. He didn't say much, but his eyes did a small, private thing I recognized. The way people look when they remember they were seen. Past Farmington, the land began to rise. Colorado wore its bones on the outside. Blue spine, white knuckles, long, strong ribs where the trees held on. The air got thinner, which made my thoughts louder, which meant I had to pick the kind worth hearing. I pulled off at a turnout near a pass they called Molus, because the view will sew you back together if you let it. As I stood at the railing, a young woman rolled up on an e-bike that looked like a beetle from the future. Camera strapped to her chest, eyes bright, hair tucked under a beanie with a pom-pom too optimistic for the altitude. "Hi," she said, breathless in the best way. "I'm June." "Maggie," I answered. We shook hands like you do on mountaintops, with the ridiculous certainty that you were obviously meant to meet. June asked if she could film my hands holding a mirror up to the light. "Just hands," she said. "No faces. Your story, not your identity." I agreed, on one condition. You have to hide one yourself. Her grin could have powered a city. She tucked a tiny lose where the metal guardrail kinked, just under a bolt the color of old pennies. On the back she wrote, "Put your ear down, the rock remembers." We both leaned in, cheek to cold iron, and listened. Wind. A raven's croak. The far-off stubborn murmur of snowmelt. "Yep," I said. "It does." From Silverton we drooped and dipped down into red canyons that looked like the Earth's own handwriting. Utah opened like a door to a cathedral no one claims but everyone uses. Arches, pillars, windows carved by a hand older than language. That's where the storm found me. It started as a rumor at the horizon, a smudge like a thumbprint on glass. Then the wind swept in, not angry, insistent. Sand lifted and moved across the highway in long, low rivers. The sky went the color of a mailbag, gray with a hint of work left in it. I pulled into a tiny RV park run by a woman in a wide hat and a stubborn smile. "You'll stay," she said, more fact than question. "Tonight, this is a town." And it was. People unfolded awnings, shared extension cords, passed around a pot of something that tasted like all the kitchens I've ever trusted. We set up our 3 blue camp chairs, my traveling companions I carried even when traveling alone, and I tucked a mirror under the crossbeam of the common shelter. Gather before you scatter. June's video light flicked on and off in the dust, a firefly that had done the math. She filmed hands passing bowls, someone fixing a stranger's taillight with a hair tie and a prayer, a toddler asleep with his face against a dog. None of us were the main character. That made it perfect. In the morning, the world looked washed and new, like it had thought about quitting and decided not to. I crossed into Idaho with a trunk full of clean air. In Boise, a narrow footbridge arched over a green river, shouldering its way with quiet authority. I taped a caramel tin to the underside, mirror inside, note folded small. Toss a little kindness. The current knows where to take it. An old man in a ball cap lifted his chin at me, a salute we both understood. A little boy in a red hat peered over the rail, eyes bright. He didn't take the tin. He left it for someone who needed it more. That's the thing about light. The right people don't hoard it. They aim it. Oregon didn't so much arrive as exhale. The pine came back. The air leaned cool. The sky felt lower, kind, familiar. That first breath crossing the border tasted like a letter finally delivered. Not urgent, just important. Home looked smaller in the best way, like it had trimmed what didn't matter and left the essentials. My neighbor, Mrs. Reyes, had hung a hand-painted sign on my porch. "Welcome home" in letters that looked like they'd been practicing happiness. She hugged me with both arms and part of her past. Did the roads behave? They had opinions. "Good," she said. "Means you were listening." I told her about Joan, about Luce, about the dry lake of mirrors and the garage and the storm and the boy who didn't take the tin because he knew someone else should. Mrs. Reyes listened with her whole face, then set a plate of lemon cookies between us like a period at the end of a long sentence. "What will you do with it?" she asked. "With what?" "The light." I looked out at my little town. The library, the footpath to the shore, the sagging bridge where teenagers first learn the shape of their own names. I think, I said, I'll deliver it. The plan wasn't fancy. Once a month, a gentle walk. We'd call it the Loose Walk. 2 or 3 stops, no publicity beyond a paper flyer and the whisper of neighbors. A hidden mirror under a shelf in the library. Another under the humming plank of the old footbridge. A third in the crevice of a tide-washed rock by the lighthouse, where the ocean could sign its approval twice a day. I printed simple flyers. Loose Walk. Find 3 quiet lights. Bring your where next. At the bottom, in small letters, tea and cookies where you see blue chairs. I asked Ruth at the library if we could place a small wooden box by the front desk. "For notes?" she asked. "For destinations," I said. "People's next steps." She slid the box across the counter like it had been waiting there all its life. We launched with a drizzle. The kind locals call polite rain. A dozen people showed up at first. 2 schoolgirls with orange raincoats, Mr. Grant with a Korea vet cap and a posture that still knew orders, a young mother with eyes that scanned for danger and settled for hope, and June. She'd driven up, camera off, mittens on, promising to film only hands, not faces. At the bridge, I taught them to listen. "Some boards sing," I said. We walked the length of the planks, tapping with our toes until one gave back a low note, a soft wooden vowel. The orange coat girls gasped at the same time. We curled under the rail together, feeling foolish and faithful, and their small fingers found the mirror first. On the back, "If it hums for you, it's yours." They held the light like a biscuit, fragile and purposeful. At the library, the map shelf smelled like dust and discipline. Someone found the coin-bright circle with the etched instruction, "Between latitude and attitude, listen." Ruth clapped quietly, as if a child had taken a first step with an atlas under one arm. By the lighthouse, the tide was right. It pulled breath in, held it, let it go. The mirror tucked under the salt-smoothed lip flashed just once, a wink you had to earn. We left it there. Some lights are meant to stay. Back at the blue chairs, we poured tea. People slipped notes into the wooden box. Where next? Some were brave, some were shy, some were a single word that tasted like a whole orchard. I read a few aloud with permission. Home. Back to the piano, even if my hands shake. To the brother I haven't called in 30 years. Into the ocean. With a friend beside me. To the dance that starts at 7 and ends whenever I stop apologizing. We didn't offer advice. We built roots. For the brother not called in 30 years, I drew a small map. 3 places in town where echo is kind. The bench under the wind chimes, the notch in the dunes where the wind tucks words close, the phone booth by the bakery that still works if you ask it nicely. For the ocean swimmer, we scheduled dawn. 2 towels, 1 thermos, 1 arm linked into another. For the dance, Mrs. Reyes declared her kitchen available on Tuesdays. The only rule, she said, is that your knees and your past must forgive each other. I started carrying a new kind of mailbag, a canvas satchel with mirrors wrapped in dish towels and a pencil case full of soft pencils. The town started to learn the rhythm of it. Once a month we walk, once a week we answer one. Where next? With a route you can walk in, 20 minutes, and feel in your bones by bedtime. Sometimes Joan joined by phone, her voice thinner some days, steady on others. She never asked to be honored. She asked for updates, like any good supervisor of wonder. What did the bridge sing today? Who wrote the bravest card? Did you leave a mirror for the person who didn't show up but needed to? When she felt strong, she drove up. She'd sit with a blanket over her knees, eyes bright, hands patient. She called herself my postal cartographer emeritus and insisted the title came with no real perks except one. She got the first lemon cookie. One afternoon, after a loose walk that ended in rain and laughter and 2 lost umbrellas, a plain white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. My name written in a firm hand. I held it a moment before opening, the way I used to hold other people's letters, as if heat could bless paper. Inside, a single page, lavender scent, faint and stubborn. You don't remember me. Years ago, you misdelivered a letter to my house. You walked back in the rain and brought it to the right door with a joke. When the mail ends, the adventure begins. I rolled my eyes back then. Today I found a mirror near your lighthouse. I think I get it now. C. I read it twice, pressed it to my chest the way some folks do a cross. Then I slid it into the notebook under a divider I labeled with a pencil. Proof. The months gathered themselves like soft blankets. We hid and found. We drank tea. We walked in every weather except cruelty. People kept slipping notes into the box, and we kept answering them with maps small enough to finish and big enough to change you. One morning, June sent a link to a video she'd cut together. Hands, mirrors, a bridge plank humming under a worn boot, a kettle steaming into a cold morning, tide breath, a wrench in Earl's hand, pausing above a tube like a prayer before a stitch. No faces, no names, just light doing what light does when it trusts you. Can I post it? She asked. Will it bring a crowd? I asked back. Maybe, she said, but I think it'll bring the right ones. We posted it. The comments were not fireworks, they were campfires. My grandmother left a mirror under a bench in '99. I thought I made it up. I'm 65. Today, I stopped on a bridge and listened. Where do I begin? I answered that last one out loud to my own screen, like a fool and a priest. Begin where your hands already know what to carry. Not every day was a story. Some were simply days. I learned to love those best, the pauses between addresses. I watered Mrs. Reyes's fuchsias when she visited her sister. Ruth taught me how to repair a torn atlas spine. I mailed a package of mirrors to Earl with a note, "For the cars that just need mercy." And when Dottie made her small cough again, I didn't panic. I patted the dash. "Me too, girl," I said. "Me too." Some nights, I sat on my porch and held the mysterious key up to the porch light. It glinted, always new and always old, like truth. I never did find a lock for it. I've decided it doesn't need one. Some things are keys because they remind you there are doors, even when you can't see them yet. On the last Saturday of fall, we tried something new. We called it the Slow Festival. No booths, no stage, just blue chairs under the library awning, a table with tea and lemon cookies, and a sign, "Bring your ware next. We'll sit with it." People came, a few at a time. We didn't fix their lives. We didn't try. We asked, what is the next small door? And what is a kind way to knock? When someone cried, we gave them a napkin and a route to the bench with the wind chimes. When someone laughed, we wrote down the way they said it so they could find it again. At dusk, June filmed our hands as we folded the blue chairs. She caught the exact second the porch light flicked on. Not dramatic, simply faithful. I slipped a mirror under the bottom step of the library just because, and wrote on the back, "If you needed this, you're on time." That night, I dreamed of a map with no edges, not because it went on forever, but because everywhere it faded, a hand I didn't recognize was drawing more. I woke with my chest warm, like I'd been wearing the sun inside my ribs. The next morning, a note waited in the library box, firm, careful handwriting. Where next? To the day I can ask for help without shame, answer to self, begin with, "May I call you?" and "Would you walk with me?" I wrote, in the smallest letters that still count as letters, "Yes, call me. I like to walk slowly. Maggie, 55555-1515. I sealed it before I could chicken out. Then I delivered it myself to a house with a lilac bush that remembered every spring anyone ever promised it. We walked the block together. Once around was enough. Twice was brave. 3 times was friendship. Northbound, southbound, homebound. It turns out they can all be the same direction when the compass is kindness. And that key on my visor? It's still there. A reminder that not every lock is a door. Some are hearts, some are days. Some are the quiet, ordinary mornings when you wake up, boil water, and decide, again, to deliver hope. The rain came soft that morning, the kind that doesn't ask permission. It tapped gently on Dottie's roof while I packed a small bag, 2 thermoses, the carving knife, a roll of thin twine, and the big mirror that still had one question etched faintly on its back. Where next? Joan and I drove toward the forest. The road climbed in slow, thoughtful spirals until it leveled into mist. Pines dripped silver. The air smelled alive. "This is the one," she said. "The bridge that hums in B minor." It was smaller than I expected. Old timber stretched across a creek, its boards slick with moss, its railings carved with initials that time had softened into size. We stood there, listening. The water below wasn't rushing. It was talking, steady and low. Joan touched the railing and smiled. "This is a good place for memory to stay awake." We set to work. She marked the wood while I warmed the knife's handle with my palms. Together we carved a single sentence into the underside of the rail. If the water remembers, we do too. When we finished, we pressed our thumbs into the letters, sealing them with skin and silence. Then we tied the mirror beneath, where the morning light could find it but not flaunt it. The sun broke through for a heartbeat. Its beam hit the mirror and ricocheted onto a stone by the shore. For a moment, the whole world looked lit from underneath. "That's the signal," Joan said softly. "The circuit's complete." We brewed tea on the bridge deck, steam curling into the damp air. Birds started their arguments. Everything, even the smallest sound, felt deliberate, like the forest was dictating a letter to whoever cared to read. Later, 2 hikers came by, an older couple with matching raincoats the color of plum skins. They asked if we were scientists. No, I said. We're postal workers. For the heart. They laughed, the way polite strangers do when they're not sure if you're joking. Then the woman leaned over the rail, tracing the carving with her fingertip. If the water remembers, she read aloud, finishing quietly. We do too. When she looked up, her eyes had that shimmer people get when something inside them fits again. She took a small envelope from her pocket and asked if she could leave it under the beam. We made room. After they left, Joan opened it. A note inside read, "Where next? To the day we can stand by a river without saying sorry. Answer to self. Learn how to listen before speaking." We added it to our growing collection of small truths. That night, back in town, we held what we called the Gratitude Supper. Nothing formal, just soup, bread, laughter, and a circle of blue chairs on Mrs. Reyes's porch. Ruth brought old maps, June brought her camera, off, and Earl mailed us a box of nuts and bolts with a note that said, "For bridges, metal or otherwise." Joan sat wrapped in a plaid blanket, her eyes tired but bright. "We should make it official," she said, "the Luz Network, a map of slow light." So we did. Every person who'd found or planted a mirror became a dot. Every shared meal, a line connecting them. The map grew without coordinates, only stories, places, and the promise to deliver hope where it's gone missing. Weeks passed. Letters began arriving from people we'd never met. A retired teacher in Maine who'd found a mirror taped under a park bench. A nurse in Chicago who discovered one on her hospital's roof garden. A child in Oregon who'd been given one by her grandfather and used it to start a kindness club. The world, it seemed, was reflecting back. Then came the quiet season. Joan began to tire faster. She called it her loose week of rest. I called it time borrowed from Grace. One evening she told me, "When I go, I want you to keep delivering. You're better at roots." "Don't talk like that," I said. She smiled. "Maggie, I'm a lawyer. I deal in contracts. Promise me you'll keep the mail moving." I promised. The day she passed, the sea was calm. A light wind swept through the town and rattled the fuchsia blooms outside the window like applause too polite to interrupt. We buried her under a cedar tree that faced the water. I placed one of her mirrors on the grave, etched with her words, "You are the map." For weeks afterward, I felt unanchored. Then one morning, I woke to find a letter on my doorstep. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a small square of polished glass and a note written in an unfamiliar hand. "Your friend's light reached us. We're carrying it forward. Thank you for keeping the road open." I smiled through the tears. The network had found its next carrier. The following year, our town hosted its first festival of slow light. No stage, no speeches, just people walking, talking softly, leaving mirrors in the cracks of sidewalks or taping them behind street signs. Kids drew arrows with chalk pointing to somewhere kind. When evening came, we gathered by the shore. Dozens of small lights dotted the sand, candles inside glass jars, each reflecting a piece of sky. The tide moved in and out like breathing. I stood at the edge. Dottie parked behind me, the mysterious key in my pocket. I still didn't know what door it opened. Maybe none, maybe all. A little girl tugged my sleeve. "Are you the mail lady?" "Used to be," I said. She handed me a mirror no bigger than a coin. "Then, this is for you." It said, "Deliver here." On the back, in shaky letters, "Home." I laughed, the kind of laugh that feels like crying turned upright. I knelt, helped her place it in the sand among the others, and whispered, "Delivered." The sea answered with a single wave, brushing our footprints clean. Now, every morning, I sit on my porch with coffee, watching the town wake. The blue chairs wait under the awning. The wooden box beside the library still fills with, "Where next?" notes. Sometimes I take a few and match them to places, a bench, a bridge, a bakery door. Sometimes the right answer is just to sit beside someone until they remember how to start walking again. I still carry the key on a red thread around my wrist. People ask if I've figured out what it's for. I tell them, yes, it opens time. Because that's what loose really is, a key to time. Not the kind that rewinds it, but the kind that lets you feel its pulse. I'm older now, slower, happier. My hands still shake when I carve, but the words come steady. Deliver hope, deliver hope, deliver hope. If you ever find a mirror under a bridge or in the curve of a stone wall, look close. You might see a small heart and the initials M.O. scratched into the edge. That's me, still delivering, still learning the route, still finding the right address for the light, because when the mail ends, the adventure begins. And I don't think mine ever really will.